So earlier this week, my psych teacher gave us an assignment in which we had to do some research and present our findings to the class. This could either be from a survey, an interview, or even a piece of media. And I thought to myself, hey, gaming is media, I'll just do it on a game. So that's what I'm doing. This is a psychoanalysis of the main antagonist of Bendy and the Ink Machine, the Ink Demon himself. Joey Drew Studios was established in the late 1920s, with its main founders being Joseph Drew and Henry Stein. Henry was a talented animator who worked with Joey Drew Studios. Although his time in the studio isn't thoroughly documented, it is rumored that he is the sole creator and designer of the studio's most famous and iconic characters, one of those characters being Bendy. During his employment, Henry would have to spend days at a time working on characters and animation clips for Joey. Henry eventually left the studio in 1930 to spend more time with his wife Linda. As the years passed on, so did the popularity of the beloved Devil Darling. Not even the greatest talent Joey could hire was doing much for his studio. Wanting to save his studio, Joey hired a theme park designer, Bertram Piedmont, to build him a park that he would call Bendyland. One of the big things Joey wanted for his park was to let the children interact and play with their favorite characters. Concepts ranged from puppets to mascots to animatronics, but nothing would fit the image Joey had in mind. Not until he hired a gent engineer named Thomas Connor. Thomas was tasked with building a machine that would mold life-size figures of the characters. But what Thomas didn't know was that he was about to bring those characters to life. And the first character to emerge was Bendy. Upon emerging from the machine, Bendy was immediately curious of the world he had just entered. The gent employees noticed that the Ink Demon would wander around the studio in a seemingly docile manner. Although he didn't act hostile, Bendy's appearance greatly disturbed the employees and gave them an uneasy feeling whenever he was nearby.
The first figure ever created was a failed attempt in the likeness of the character called Bendy. There's just something unworldly about him.
Joey was especially disgusted at Bendy's appearance. He didn't even want anyone to see him in fear that it would ruin his project.
I'm paying for living attractions, not weird abominations. Whatever that grinning thing was I saw wandering around your office, you better keep it locked up tight. Imagine if the press caught sight of it. Might scare off investors.
Joey had Bendy locked away in a dark room inside the studio's infirmary. Although he was hidden from sight, there were still times when people could hear him crying below them.
Every night, just as I'm picking up my coat, there's a deep groan rising up from the floor.
That's when the moaning started. It was like an animal, like when a starving dog howls in an alley. Buddy Lowick worked in the art department. He had stayed later than the others, and he wanted to investigate the strange noise coming from the infirmary below. When Buddy opened the door, Bendy's presence was immediately known. Buddy couldn't see the creature, but he was still frightened knowing that it was right behind him. Buddy was so frightened that he ran. Bendy was afraid that Buddy was going to lock the door behind him, so he shoved his way past Buddy and ran deeper into the studio. Buddy searched for the ink creature, accompanied by his friend Dot. They finally confronted him in the nearby theater where Joey stored his ink machine. They tricked the ink creature into falling through a trap door and broke a nearby pipe to fill it with ink. Bendy grabbed Buddy by the leg and dragged him down as well. Buddy drowned and was later revived as the perfect embodiment of Boris the Wolf. Joey was overjoyed to find Buddy. He had found the perfect way to bring his characters to life. As time went on, more and more of the staff were imprisoned within the husks of ink. While some could only take misshapen forms, others were reborn as recognizable characters. Nearly all the staff were trapped in the studio. For the next 10 to 14 years, they all wandered the halls, all the while fearing the now hostile ink demon who stalked them. The studio was eventually abandoned. The fate of Joey's employees would remain unknown until Joey invited Henry to return in 1960. On that day, Henry would have to suffer the same fate. Henry attempted to flee, but the floor gave way beneath him. Henry ventured deeper into the studio, attempting to find another way out. He fainted when he entered a strange room with a marking on the floor, surrounded by candles. The ink machine had created a strange ink that was not only a mold for bodies, but also a living entity that heavily influenced the mind. The now living ink had convinced the studio employees to worship Bendy as a divine being with the hopes that he would set them free. Bendy's most devoted follower was a musician named Sammy Lawrence. When Henry awoke, Sammy attacked him and offered him to the ink demon as a sacrifice. However, his plan backfired.
No, my lord! Stay back! I am your prophet! I am your...
It was unclear whether or not Bendy intended on saving Henry, but Henry fled anyway. He later crossed paths with a Boris clone that he would grow to call Buddy. Fans have speculated that this may be the very Boris clone that Buddy Loic was turned into. Going deeper into the studio, Henry was confronted by an Alice clone that would later be learned to be Susie Campbell, Alice's first voice actress, and one of the first victims of Joey Drew. Alice promised to help Henry leave the studio if he would first do favors for her. When the time came to leave, Alice noticed that Buddy accompanied Henry in the elevator. She sabotaged the elevator and took Buddy away. Henry followed after Alice, eventually finding the storage house where all the attractions were kept. Henry had to power up the haunted house in order to continue his search for Buddy. During his search for the power switches, Henry was attacked by Norman Polk, who was now trapped within a monster called the Projectionist. The Projectionist nearly killed Henry until Bendy intervened. Bendy killed the Projectionist and took his body away. He was aware of Henry's presence, but he chose to leave him in peace. Again, his intentions were unknown. When Henry finally reunited with Boris, it was too late. Alice had taken parts of his body and turned him into a Frankenstein-like creature. Alice commanded the now-dead Boris to attack Henry, and Henry was forced to kill him in self-defense. Alice was immediately killed by Alison Pendle, who was later revealed to be Alice's second voice actress. Henry ventures further into the studio, accompanied by Allison and her companion Tom, as they seek refuge from the ink demon. On the way, they are attacked by Sammy and his followers. After fighting off Sammy and the Lost Ones, they determine that they must kill Bendy in order to be truly safe from him. Allison leads Henry to the machine, and Henry ventures inside, finding an end reel that will kill Bendy. The ink demon confronts Henry, and is immediately aware of what he is planning. Fearing for his life, Bendy transforms himself into a large beast and chases Henry throughout the machine. Bendy fails to kill Henry, and Henry plays the end reel on the projector. As the projector plays, Bendy fades away into the air. However, Bendy's story has yet to conclude. After playing the reel, Henry is taken back to Joey's apartment and forced to re-enter the studio, doomed to repeat the story over and over again. Whenever Bendy walks or runs, he does so with a limp on his left leg. It is likely this is the result of his encounter with Buddy, when Buddy cut his leg with an axe. Wherever Bendy goes, the walls around him are drenched in ink. Bendy may be just as influenced by the ink's voices as the other people in the studio. It is rumored that Bendy is able to hear things very well, as explained by Alice in Chapter 3.
They say he hears everything. Every creak of the floor. Every rustle of paper.
Alice's dialogue in Chapter 3 hints that her morphed face might be the result of a past encounter with Bendy.
I will not let the demon touch me again.
Alice is in no way fond of Bendy, and she makes that clear when Henry is tasked with breaking his cutouts.
You see those grinning demons? Let's remove them, shall we? He hates it when I do that.
While everyone in the studio is afraid of the ink demon, there is a possibility that the ink demon may be just as afraid of them. It was like a mini surgery, and everything was all over the place. Garbage on the floor, the bin knocked to one side, strange surgical tools were lying sprayed across the counter. Whatever Joey did to Bendy in that room, it must have been what bound him to the end reel, and left him afraid of humans. This could explain why Bendy is so quick to attack anyone he encounters in the studio.
Stay away from the ink demon. He kills anything that moves.
Every encounter Bendy had with a human left him harmed in one way or another. Joey locked him away in a dark room and possibly experimented on him. Buddy Loic tried to drown him. Alice takes pleasure in destroying anything that resembles him. Practically everyone in the studio is influenced and brainwashed by the ink, and all of them are trapped in a never-ending time loop. All these things might have caused him to develop post-traumatic stress disorder and conditioned him to attack anything he sees in a means of self-defense. I cannot ultimately say if it is possible to repair any of the damage, as there is still information to be discovered in the upcoming game Bendy in the Dark Revival. But for now, I would have to guess that recovery would be extremely difficult for him.